Picture this. A golden brown mother dog, ribs visible beneath her matted fur, staggers into an abandoned chapel. Her eyes, filled with desperation, lock onto the statue of the Virgin Mary. What happens next will leave you breathless. The old St. Alora's chapel had stood forgotten for decades, stone walls cracked and weathered, the roof sagging in places, and once polished pews now rotting under layers of dust and cobwebs. Yet amidst the decay, one thing remained untouched by time: the statue of the Virgin Mary. Her serene, sorrowful face seemed to carry the weight of centuries, her hands forever open and welcome, as if waiting for someone to return. Most villagers passed by the ruined chapel without a second glance. To them, it was just another relic, a place of broken stones and faded memories. But on one cold, gray afternoon, something extraordinary unfolded within its silent walls. A thin, golden-brown mother dog stumbled through the broken doorway. Her ribs protruded beneath her matted fur, and her legs trembled so violently it seemed she might collapse at any moment. Yet she pressed forward, step by agonizing step, until she reached the center of the chapel. There, before the statue of Mary, the dog forced herself upright on her hind legs. Her front paws pressed together as if in prayer, her dark, desperate eyes fixed on the sorrowful face of the statue above. Behind her, 3 tiny puppies huddled close. 2 whimpered softly, their frail bodies shaking from hunger and cold. The third lay motionless, barely breathing, its eyes closed. The mother dog did not move. Her body quivered from exhaustion, but she stood tall, as though begging not for herself, but for her babies. At that very moment, Margaret Doyle, a widow from the village, pushed open the chapel door. She had come only to light a candle in memory of her late husband, but the sight that greeted her froze her in place. Her hand flew to her mouth. "Dear God," she whispered, her voice trembling. For a long moment, Margaret could only stare the mother dog in prayer. The shivering puppies, the quiet gaze of Mary's statue above them. It felt like a vision, something beyond human understanding. Then her heart jolted into action. She turned and ran back to the village. Margaret's voice rang through the narrow streets. "Come quickly, there are animals at the chapel dying." Within minutes, villagers were hurrying toward the chapel. Some carried blankets, others food and water. Dr. Harold Bennett, the local veterinarian, brought his worn leather kit. Children peeked out from behind their parents, curiosity shining in their eyes. When they entered the chapel, the mother dog did not snarl or attack. She only stood protectively in front of her puppies, her body trembling. Her eyes darted between the strangers and the statue above, as though she still held her silent prayer. Dr. Bennett knelt by the smallest puppy, the one that lay still. He touched its tiny body, his face grave. "It's very weak," he murmured, opening his kit. "But still alive." The mother whined, pacing anxiously, but she did not interfere. It was as though she understood these people meant no harm. Meanwhile, other villagers wrapped the 2 stronger puppies in cloth, spooning warm milk into their mouths. Margaret herself knelt by the mother, placing a bowl of food before her. For a moment, the dog only stared. Then, hunger overcoming fear, she lowered her head and ate. The chapel filled with sounds, rustling cloth, hurried footsteps, gentle voices. The long silent ruin was alive again. Then suddenly the room grew quiet. Everyone's eyes were on Dr. Bennett. He was rubbing the limp puppy gently, his voice low and urgent. "Come on, little one. Breathe. Stay with us." For what felt like eternity, nothing happened. Then a twitch, shudder. The puppy's tiny chest rose. Gasps filled the chapel. Some villagers covered their mouths. Others cried openly. Margaret dropped to her knees, whispering, "Thank you, Lord." The puppy opened its eyes, weak but alive. Right there, beneath the statue of the Virgin Mary, life had returned. To the villagers, it was more than medicine. It was a miracle. A desperate mother's prayer answered in the most fragile of ways. From that day on, the chapel was no longer abandoned. The villagers gathered, determined to restore it. They scrubbed the floors, replaced the broken windows, and brought fresh flowers to place at Mary's feet. Along the side walls, they built small shelters for animals in need. What had once been a ruin became a sanctuary, a house of mercy. Among the villagers who witnessed the miracle was Daniel Reed, a boy of 12. Daniel was an orphan, thin and quiet, always wandering alone. He rarely spoke, his eyes carrying more sorrow than a child should bear. That evening, he stood near the corner of the chapel, watching silently as the puppies licked milk from a dish, their tails wagging weakly. Something inside him shifted. For the first time in years, a smile flickered across his face. Margaret noticed. She touched the shoulder of a neighbor and whispered, "The boy. Look at him. He needs a family as much as those little ones." The idea spread among them. That night, as the villagers gathered again, one voice spoke, "Why don't we take him in too? The chapel has room for more than animals. Mercy has no limits." Heads nodded. And so, just as they embraced the mother dog and her puppies, they also embraced the orphan boy. From that day, Daniel was never alone. The villagers gave him food, clothing, and a place to sleep. But more than that, he had companionship. The mother dog, whom the villagers named Grace, curled around him at night. Her puppies Hope, Faith, and little Gabriel tumbled into his lap, licking his hands until he laughed. Slowly, Daniel's heart healed. He began to play with the other children, to laugh freely, to speak without fear. For the first time in his life, he belonged. Years passed, but the story of that afternoon never faded. People still spoke of the day a trembling mother dog had stood before the statue of Mary, pleading with silent paws. They remembered the dying puppy that opened its eyes, the church reborn, the lonely boy who found a family. The sanctuary continued to grow. Stray cats found shelter there. Injured birds were nursed back to health. Farmers brought abandoned animals, and villagers took turns feeding them. The once empty chapel became a living symbol of mercy. Daniel grew into a kind young man, strong in body and gentle in heart. He often sat in the chapel at dusk, the dogs curled at his feet, whispering prayers of gratitude. And every time he looked at Grace, her muzzle now streaked with gray, remembered the miracle that had changed not only her life, but his own. It was more than a rescue. It was a reminder that mercy knows no boundaries, that love in its purest form can heal the weak, the lost, and entire communities. And so, in the heart of the village, the old chapel stood not as a ruin, but as a sanctuary of compassion, where every creature, human or animal, was welcomed and loved.